Color is the melody of light. That's how I like to think about it. So on one hand, it's a science. Red and blue will always make purple. The color wheel is fixed. But on the other hand, it's a mystery. And when I'm working with color, I'm trying to put colors together that move right in front of your eyes. When there's movement in the colors, you're sort of drawing the viewer in and washing over them. And then, the arrangement of those colors and the relative sizes, that makes the composition, and that's like the rhythm of a piece. So that then moves the viewer around the piece. So I think color draws you in, and then the composition of that color moves you around. Picking the material that you're going to make an artwork with, I think, is the most impactful decision for that artwork. So I tend to enjoy working with materials that have a mind of their own, specifically water-based paints and inks. There's a sense that they're out of my control. And I think that gives art making a feeling of play and sense lightness and humor and imagination are really important to me. That play is really necessary to creating my best works. So gouache specifically is very absorbing. It absorbs into the paper and it absorbs light. So gouache paintings have a sense of calm to them, a sense of ease, like smooth sailing. That sense of ease is often in contrast to imagery that might be more wrought or anxious. And that helps me talk about more difficult ideas in a way that's, I think, very approachable. I think style comes from the way that you like to work. So I like to work quickly and with energy, and that comes across in sort of the gestural moves. And I also like to work with these materials that move on their own. So my style would include the drips of the paint or the blooms where water splashed onto the canvas. And then the other thing I like to do is play with color, and color is a huge part of my paintings and the overall look. I think using the gouache also keeps me in a certain palette at the moment. Since everything is soft and you end up using a lot of white paint, there's a lot of pastel colors. So then the overall style becomes very soft and hopefully welcoming, and on my best days, not overwrought. I started in ceramics when I left my undergrad education. I was looking for a community that I could join as an artist, and I found the ceramic studios are full of very helpful and kind people. The reason I continue with it is because it helps me stay very open. Clay is also water-based, so I have an affinity for that. It's not too different from the paints that I use. It also has a mind of its own. There is also the sense that you are sort of building things and you're responding to the material itself. It's very material focused. You can plan the form, but then physics kicks in and the clay itself moves, and then there's the kiln. So all these things make a lot of movement in the piece that you couldn't plan for. And I took that same idea into my next series of paintings, which I think have been my strongest yet. In the case of this show, I had a very specific viewer in mind. I have someone in my life who was going through a tough time. And so I dedicated this series of paintings to that person. And I wanted to acknowledge that there is anxiety and decision-making and religious duty in history and relationships, but then sort of use the process of painting to turn that into something that can contain beauty and be warm, inviting, and something we can come to peace with. Being an artist is having a sense of freedom. I thought a lot about this year as I was making many paintings, And I kept coming back to this idea that for me, being an artist is not about the number of paintings I'm making, or the scale, or the size, or even that anything is being produced at all. But it's a commitment to thinking things through in a visual way. There's also an openness to it, an openness to different ideas, a way to respond to constraints, the constraint of materials, the constraint of a rectangle. It's a way of being in the world in which you believe that you have a lot of agency. So it's a very empowering feeling, and I think no matter what I'm doing in the day-to-day, you can approach life in that way, actually.